thank you for joining me here at Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today I am going to be doing a video where I share some other books that if you like these books, then you should try out one of these other books, which is very similar in theme and vibe. And so the theme for this video too, I thought would be fun to have a theme for it. And so I'm doing, if you have read this book by a male author, then you should read this other book, which is written by a female author. Beginning with a book that I've talked about a lot on this channel and a writer I've talked about a lot, and that is Jeff Vandermeer and his book Annihilation. So if you like cosmic horror, unsettling, weird sci-fi stuff that deals with nature, like weird nature stuff, like biology horror or something, I feel like is what this genre should be called, because it deals with the body and nature and just weird stuff. But also if you like a look into a person's relationship with their spouse as they reflect on it, and if you are into books about people who do expeditions into this unknown thing where weird things happen and they come back and they're changed, and just trying to figure out why they're changed and what happened in this weird place and what's going on, and just a lot of unsettling stuff, sci-fi stuff happening. So if you like that, you should read Annihilation. And then you should also read Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, because this book has all of the things I just mentioned that were in Annihilation. So unsettling, cosmic, sci-fi, biology, horror, as well as looking into this person's relationship she has with her spouse, just reflecting back on it and what their past relationship means to these characters going forward, And they both deal with someone who goes on an expedition somewhere and then they return and they are changed. So as I was reading Our Wives Under the Sea, the story is, it's not the same as Annihilation, but as I was reading it, I was definitely getting those Annihilation vibes. So I would definitely, if you've read one and liked it, you should definitely try out the other. They are both incredible. I absolutely loved each of them. Like I said, I like the creepy, unsettling sci-fi stuff going on. And I will say Annihilation is creepier and more unsettling, whereas Our Wives Under the Sea has that biology horror, but it's not as creepy. But it does have some body horror stuff going on still, nonetheless. But I also just love the look into each of these people's relationships. And Annihilation, the biologist is reflecting back on her husband and just seeing the different messages he left her, and just seeing how she affected the relationship too, and what she did right or wrong. And then we get that in Our Wives Under the Sea, where our main character, her wife comes back changed, and she is thinking back on their relationship. And I just found both of them very touching as they, reflect on their relationships essentially. So I really loved both. Highly recommend them each. And then next up, this is kind of like a loose, it's not a loose connection, but one deals with World War I and the other deals with World War II. So in that way, it's a loose connection because it's not the same war. However, war is war, right? War is hell, no matter what war you're in. But All Quiet on the Western Front, of course, is one I covered last year, and it was a great book about World War I, told from the perspective of one of the men fighting in the war, and seeing how he has changed because of this war and the horrors he has experienced on the front lines. And then to go along with that, I thought a good book that you should read is The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah, because this one is about World War II, and it's about women and how these women are changed through the course of the horrors of war that they experience. They're not on the front lines, but obviously they live in France, and France was invaded, and so maybe they weren't enlisted and fighting in the war, literally, but they were still fighting in the war by living at home and dealing with these soldiers and different things that were happening. So I feel like these are great because they both show you the horrors of war and what people had to go through and what they endured and what they sacrificed. And I love it because this hand we can see what the men went through who were fighting, but then we also see what the women went through who had to stay home, and the way they fought in their own way. And then also as a bonus one is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, which is of course about people who live in the Midwest who move to California to find work. But once they get there, turns out it's horrible and they're being treated badly, and they just end up leaving from one bad situation to another situation that is even worse in some ways, And if you like that by John Steinbeck, then you could read The Four Winds, also by Kristin Hannah. And this one is kind of a bonus suggestion because, to be totally honest, I didn't love The Four Winds. Some parts of it were really interesting and really well done, and it is about, again, a woman who lives in the Midwest. The Dust Bowl happens and then she goes to California. They realize that this is not the paradise they expected and the workers are treated so poorly. And so, very similar in theme, obviously, in the message. And Grapes of Wrath is written by a man, but he does focus on the woman as well. And whereas The Four Winds, obviously the main character is a woman and her daughter. But honestly, The Four Winds, I just didn't love it. And it was a bit too, it felt overly romantic or like glamorized what was happening in some ways. And there were some cheesy moments too, whereas Grapes of Wrath never felt cheesy. That one felt like, the stark reality of what was happening. And there was nothing like glamorized in the Grapes of Wrath. Whereas The Four Winds, I feel like Kristin Hannah sometimes glamorizes the suffering people go through, honestly. And so that's why I don't love all of her books, which I have a video about this. But yeah, I feel like the way she writes about the suffering is almost, I just don't like it sometimes. The Nightingale was good too, and that's about, people going through hard things, and I thought she did a really good job with The Nightingale. The Four Winds, though, it was a bit too glamorized, I guess is the best way I can say it, and it wasn't as much of the stark reality as it should have been, I guess. But people disagree with me on that video where I talk about Kristin Hannah. A lot of people disagree with me and say that she doesn't romanticize suffering and that she does a great job, so it's just my personal opinion. I thought I would include it though anyway because both of these books are very similar. And if you like The Four Winds, you should definitely read The Grapes of Wrath. And if you like The Grapes of Wrath and you want more Dust Bowl content and more about, migrant workers, people working in the fields in the 1930s, then you should read The Four Winds because they talk about that too and the start of the unions, which, both books talk about. And then my next one is Sometimes a Great Notion by Ken Kesey. You know how much I love this book. If you are aware of my channel, I've talked about it so much. But if you like books about families, and if you like it when you get perspectives from the various family members, so you're seeing the drama within the family, you're seeing it through all of these different people's perspectives and how they view it. So you get that, but you also get this family who was once respected by the town, but something happens and they become ostracized and no longer liked by the town and just all the drama that ensues. So if you like the vibes going on with Sometimes a Great Notion in regards to that, then you should read We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates, which again, it's about a family. We get their different perspectives. There is something that happens within the family which causes them to, they go from being a well-respected family in the community to not, and their family kind of falls apart. So you get the family drama, the drama within, the town, and you get the multiple perspectives in both. And you also just get incredible writing. Ken Kesey and Joyce Carol Oates are both fantastic writers, and both of these books are also just very character driven, which I love. And I was just so invested in each of these right from the start. I just wanted to know what was going to happen with these characters. And they all of the characters in both of these books, I just love the arcs they have too. And so that's also very satisfying. And it does span decades. We Were the Mulvaneys especially spans decades. Sometimes a Great Notion, the main events span a few months, I guess, but you get a lot of backstory. So in some ways it does span decades as well in its own way. So yeah, both of these I love. Again, if you like books about familial relationships, if you like the drama, if you want something about also, like I said, there is something that happens in each of these that causes the town to dislike this family and how the family deals with being outcasts from this town where they were once so respected. So highly recommend both of them. Incredible. They were both in my best books of 2022 video. So you can hear me talk more about them in that video. Aren't you tired of being hunched over your laptop and ending the day with a crook in your neck, tight shoulders, and a sore back? There has to be a better way. Well, you're in luck because there is a better way. This adjustable laptop stand is the answer to your problems. Change the height and angle as needed, and you can say goodbye to those aches and pains. Add the keyboard and mouse, and you're really set. I don't know how I ever worked on my laptop without this. Working from home just got a whole lot better. Click the link in the description and get yours today. All cheesiness aside, this laptop stand really is incredible. I got it a year ago and I don't know how I ever worked on my laptop without it. Seriously, it has helped so much. And if you click the link in the description, it is an affiliate link, so it does benefit the channel at no cost to you. And then the last one I want to talk about is Another Bullshit Night in Suck City by Nick Flynn, along with The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. And The Glass Castle is going to be the more well-known one of these two. But if you've read one, you should read the other because both of them are memoirs. Both of them are about someone who has a parent who was an alcoholic, and then their parents also become homeless. So both of these people dealt with alcoholism and then dealt with their family, their parents being homeless, and just that struggle, right? So Jeanette Walls, though, she was raised in like extreme poverty, and Nick Flynn didn't quite have that because he was raised by his mom and she did work, and she does end up committing suicide. So even with his mom, like, it wasn't all great. But then he also had his dad who was an alcoholic, and in Jeanette Walls' story, like, both of her parents lived until the end. But yeah, her dad was an alcoholic and her mom wasn't, but her mom just had her own issues. And so both of them just had tumultuous childhoods in one way or another. And then both of them, when they were adults, both of them had their parents who were homeless, and their parents just like chose to stay homeless. And so that weird shame and guilt and wanting to help but not wanting to help and not wanting to get caught up in the drama of the parents, and the parents also like acting like they're fine being homeless. But yeah, so they both deal with just someone coming to terms with their own childhood. And Nick Flynn, he also struggled with addiction himself, so it's also his own story of getting sober. I will say Nick Flynn is better at writing about how he healed and how he healed from this experience. And if you also read the reenactments, which is like a follow-up book, I highly recommend that as well, because you just see even more how he has processed what he went through. And you also see what his relationship with his dad is like now, 10 years after his first book was published. But yeah, Jeanette Walls doesn't really talk about how she healed. She tells about her childhood and her parents, and then she talks a bit about her adulthood. But Nick Flynn talks much more about his adulthood than Jeanette Walls did. So as far as these two books go, I love both of them. But I do love Another Bullshit Night in Sex City more. He also is just a very poetic, beautiful writer. And Jeanette Walls is a great writer too. And I did love how she just is very upfront and straightforward. And she is telling about these horrible things happening. She's not writing about it, in a Kristin Hannah way where it's just like glamorized. Like when she's talking about how starving they were, she does not glamorize it, right? She just tells it like it is. And she's not trying to get pity from people either. She's just telling her story. But so yeah, both of these are, tough things happen to each of these characters. And so it's not an easy read, but it also isn't like some heavy, depressing book either. Like it's somewhere in between there. So I love both of them. They're great stories about people. And also if you like reading about addiction too, both of them cover alcoholism because both of them deal with that in each of these books. But yeah, that wraps it up as far as these books by a male author that are similar to a book by a female author. There were a couple others that I thought of, but I don't know. I felt like they didn't mesh as well as the ones I've talked about. But yeah, if you have books specifically with male versus female, because that's the theme for this, if you have a book by a male author and then a female author that is similar in vibe, definitely comment down below. Let me know. So thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.